The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who, and today we're discussing the 11th Doctor story, The Name of the Doctor. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to join the StarQuest fan club by texting StarQuest, all one word, to 66866. That's StarQuest to 66866. And I want to encourage you to stick around to the end of the episode. We're going to have your listener feedback on a previous episode we've had. We discussed the Terror of the Voids recently, and we'll have your feedback on that. And I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy called Raising the Bets. And that's a podcast I do with my wife, Melanie, where we talk about family life and cooking and books and movies and TV shows and all other kinds of fun stuff like that. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/bets. That's 2 T's, BETTS. Today, we're talking about the 11th Doctor story, The Name of the Doctor. And Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in this episode?
Using a group of semi-faceless monsters known as the Whispermen, the Great Intelligence kidnaps Vastra, Ginny, and Strax and takes them to the planet Trenzalore, where the Doctor is destined to die and be buried. Before the kidnapping, Vastra, Ginny, and Strax hold a telepathic conference call with Clara and the data ghost of River Song. They're concerned because they've had word that the Doctor's greatest secret has been discovered on Trenzalore, but before they can form a plan, the kidnapping occurs and the Doctor is forced to go to Trenzalore to rescue them. Once there, he and Clara discover his tomb, a giant, aged, future version of his TARDIS, and inside is a representation of his entire life history in the form of a glowing time stream. The Great Intelligence jumps into the time stream to corrupt it, turning every one of the Doctor's victories into a defeat and rewriting his history into a living hell. But then Clara realizes that this is how she becomes the Impossible Girl who's shown up at so many points in the Doctor's past. So she also jumps in and fragments into a million copies of herself across the time stream to undo the damage caused by the Great Intelligence and restore the Doctor's history to the way it should have been. This should kill Clara, but the Doctor enters his own time stream to save her, which he does. But in the process, Clara and the Doctor glimpse a previously unknown incarnation of his who did something terrible and does not deserve the name Doctor. The end.
Okay, very good. So this is the kind of the culmination of Clara's story with the 11th Doctor, this whole Impossible Girl thing. It's the explanation, finally, that we got to. I have to say, seeing this now, it was less confusing than when I saw it the first time. I'm not sure why it was so confusing for me the first time. It's not all that complicated, but now I get it more with the benefit of hindsight. What did you guys think of this particular story in relation to everything else?
I have to admit, this kind of felt like Stephen Moffat wanting to wrap up, like you said, as a culmination of Clara's storyline, just wanting to wrap up everything. You explain the Impossible Girl, and of course we got to get the flashbacks to other Doctors by filling in scenes in the scene of where Clara's convincing the first Doctor to take the TARDIS instead of a different TARDIS. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just it kind of felt like he wanted to throw a bunch of stuff together, and this is what we ended up with.
Okay, how about you, Jimmy?
So, I want to talk about the title of this episode, The Name of the Doctor, because in context, now you get a different experience if you just take this episode out of context like we're doing right now than if you watched it in sequence. Because they had been teasing us with there is something about the Doctor's true name that's important. It's like he has a true. They just recently in the last 2 seasons had been establishing that there is a reason that the Doctor calls himself the Doctor instead of going by his true name, that there's a reason he keeps his true name secret, that it must never be revealed for some reason, and that if it were revealed, something horrible would happen. And then they start teasing us his name is going to be revealed at Trenzalore, and he won't be able to refuse to answer when asked his name on Trenzalore, and he won't be able to lie or dissimulate, so he'll have to give his name on Trenzalore. And so they've been building up this theme of when the Doctor goes to Trenzalore, his true name will finally be revealed, and it will be significant for some reason. And so they've been making promises to the audience to that effect for 2 seasons. And then no, they completely dodge it. So that in this episode, they even call it the name of the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes to Trenzalore and he's asked his name. And they do a complete dodge this time. They also do it when he goes to Trenzalore for the second time. They dodge their way out of it then too. So if you watch it in context, if you're like, say, binge watching today, you will have an experience of them making promises to you and then not fulfilling them. And I'm not saying that's the worst artistic choice ever, but it can rankle.
Right. Well, and it's, of course, as we know from Missy later on in the 12th Doctor's season, that his name really is Doctor Who. That's his name. She says that his name really is Doctor.
No,
I'm being sarcastic, Jim. Don't worry. Don't get.
Oh, okay. Because she says he chose the name Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm perfectly fine that he is Doctor Who, not just the Doctor. He has chosen Who as part of his name and has chosen to use it at various times, but other times he prefers to just go by the Doctor.
Yeah, but that you're right though, Jimmy. I mean, that's the biggest disappointment of this is, okay, fine, you set up that he has a name other than the Doctor, and I think it's been pretty clear throughout the run of the series that yes, that is not his given name when he was born, but then you lay it out. Oh yes, this is gonna be the episode where it's revealed, and you don't. You basically just blow right past it. And have the River Ghost basically say it instead.
And we don't hear it.
Yep.
Right. Well, and then there's basically two kinds of deception in this one, because then at the end, as you mentioned in the recap, Jimmy, they have John Hurt turn around as the War Doctor, and it says John Hurt is the Doctor. And keeping in mind to the context of when this aired, we're all waiting for the revelation of who the next Doctor is going to be, and this is like this addiction that they have to, misdirection on who the next Doctor is going to be. It's just kind of a little annoying.
I didn't take the John Hurt revelation as he's going to be the Doctor after Matt Smith, because in context, he's portrayed as one of Matt Smith's memories.
Mm-hmm.
He's a previous Doctor, and we knew we had the 50th anniversary special coming up, and we knew John Hurt was going to be in that, and it was in the publicity that he's just going to be in the 50th anniversary special as this previously unknown part of the Doctor.
Okay. So I guess I didn't remember that, but they have done that, which is that sort of head fake of the who the Doctor is going to be, and I mean it's something they've done several times in the run.
Well, they did it in the next Doctor, the David Tennant special.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of them doing fake outs with other Doctors. I mean, they did it in the comedy Doctor Who and the Curse of the Fatal Death, but that was comedy.
Yeah,
that wasn't part of the series. But then what they did do was regeneration fake outs. They did that both with David Tennant, where it's like, hey, I'm regenerating, and then I'm going to channel off all this energy and not cease to be David Tennant.
Right.
And then they did it multiple times with Peter Capaldi, where in his final season, they would fake us out that he was starting to regenerate, and it would turn out not to be the actual regeneration.
Yeah. It feels cheap to go back to those sorts of head fakes all the time. It just, you've done it. Okay, let's move on to something else.
So setting that aside, the episode itself, I think, is actually okay.
Mhm.
It's interesting. It's got a lot of interesting things in it. I don't think everything is equally successful. The Whispermen, for example, are so they're guys dressed in Victorian era suits with top hats and everything, and then they have some kind of white gauze over their face so you can't see their eyes or ears or any facial features except for their mouth. And they have bright red lips and then not exactly fangs, but like jaggedy kind of shark-like teeth. And we have this serial killer who's in jail at the beginning of the episode who is doing a fairly Stephen Moffat thing. And Stephen Moffat apparently liked writing little poems, and we sometimes have these poems inserted into episodes either diegetically or non-diegetically to kind of juice the drama. And so we have this serial killer guy in jail who is saying poems about the Whispermen and building them up as some kind of spooky threat, and then all he says is they'll look at you. You know, if they notice you, they'll look at you. And it's like, okay, that's a little bit anticlimactic and non-threat-like. And eventually the Whispermen, when we have no explanation for where they come from or what they are other than what we see on screen. And eventually, for most of the episode, they don't do anything threatening when we see them. I mean, it's implied that they do something to Jenny when they're in the telepathic conference call, and Jenny is not really sure what's going on with her body, but they've injured her somehow, but we don't see that. And then late in the episode, they finally do something that's kind of threatening, which is they can apparently reach inside your body and grab your heart and make it stop by hanging on to it and interrupting your heart rhythm. And we only get to see them doing that with Strax, not with any of the other characters. So they're apparently doing it to all of them.
Right.
But the Whispermen, I think, have some promise that they don't really pay off.
I thought that the silence would be at Trenzalore. There's something. There was something in the previous episodes that featured the silence where I thought that they would be at Trenzalore, as well as some of the other from that alliance. And so when you get like the Whispermen are kind of like the silence, but except you don't forget.
Except they're totally not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the suit. I think the suit and the paleness and the monstrousness to them.
Yeah, but they're more like fantasy monsters than aliens.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah. I did like the sequences where you see Clara showing up in the different doctors' times. Like she shows up.
Oh yeah.
You know, she's in the TARDIS and the sixth doctor's walking behind her, or the fourth doctor walks past with his scarf flying up behind him, and then we do see the seventh doctor in Dragonfire. I think that's the only. No, that's not, because then we also see the third doctor driving Bessie. So those are two where it's from actual episodes.
Oh yeah, well, almost all the footage is from actual episodes, but in some places they've replaced the backgrounds.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we do get the Dragonfire sequence. I also like how they change the Clara Fragment's costume in each of those to fit the period. So in the Dragonfire clip, where the doctor is hanging off the bridge ridiculously,
yes,
she runs up this corridor and looks through a door to see him, and she's wearing a kind of it's a leather jacket with studs on it, and it's not Ace's jacket, but it's kind of got that same vibe. And then when you see her in the with the second doctor, she's wearing clothing that looks like it could be women's clothing from the early 1960s. And when you see her with the third doctor, she's wearing another costume that looks like around 1970s women's clothing. And so I like how they do the costume changes with her. I also like at the very beginning of this episode, before it all kicks off, we get a flashback to ancient Gallifrey before the doctor has stolen the TARDIS, when he's just about to. And that's nice to see.
Yeah, we see a TARDIS repair shop. I think it is described in the script. That is kind of cool. And then we end with the 11th Doctor in Victorian London, which is where Madame Vastra meets with this serial killer, I guess.
Mhm.
I like the telepathic conference call, which is essentially the metaverse. So
Yeah.
predicting Facebook's metaverse. And it's kind of cool because they call in Clara from across time, and then River Song shows up, and then this is the first time River and Clara meet, and there's this whole undercurrent here of the Doctor never told Clara about that River was his wife, and River doesn't know anything about Clara, and there's this kind of funny tension, romantic triangle.
rivals.
Yep.
Yeah, that goes on here. Until like later on when River like drops that she's the Doctor's wife, and Clara's like, "What?"
Yeah. Also, Clara mentions that the Doctor has mentioned Dr. River's song to her, but she had no idea she was a woman.
yes, that was good.
I like the way that Strax. So in this, Strax is actually up in Glasgow.
Yeah.
And Vastra says, and it's his day off, so he's up in Glasgow. And Vastra says that she wishes he'd never discovered that place because what he's doing is like having Fight Club up there,
Yes.
and with all the typical, bluster, Sontaran Empire will destroy you, things like that you would expect. And he's having a fight for fun with this guy named Archie, I think is his name.
Yeah.
And who's this real muscular guy. And so they're laying into each other when he gets word that he's got this conference call, and he rolls his eyes as like conference call, which to many people today who work jobs where they have to have conference calls. Yeah, they're not, they're often not well regarded.
Yeah.
But he then says, Archie, I must ask you to render me unconscious. It may take some time. Because he's got to be put under in order to access the telepathic conference call. I also like how once he's there, he's like, so who else do we need? And it's like, well, the women are coming, and they mean Clara. And he says, I hope the one with a gigantic head isn't coming.
And I think he meant River. Yeah.
He meant River. And Jenny says, that's hair. Strax, that's just hair, because River Song has this big mop of hair that does, in fact, if you don't know what hair is, would make her head look gigantic.
Yeah.
So the serial killer says he knows the Doctor's secret of Trenzalore, and the secret is
he says that the Doctor has a secret that he will take to his grave. It has been discovered.
Okay,
right,
so
and the Paternoster gang and the audience and everybody else assumes that his secret has been discovered. But later, Matt Smith clarifies it. No, I have a secret which I'm taking to my grave. My grave, has been discovered.
Okay, and the secret is his name.
That's what the episode title and all the buildup would imply.
Yeah,
but I think the actual secret is his time stream.
Okay. Yes. Okay. This is why I was confused the first time I watched this. So I'm glad we're clarifying this. So, one of the things the Doctor says, before we get to that, I like the sequence where the Doctor shows up at Clara's house where she's the nanny, and he's doing blind man's bluff with the kids, and he's like, "Where are you? Come on, you gotta say something." And Clara's like, "Did they told you to do blind man's bluff?" Yeah, they're at the movies. They went to they put him in the blindfold and left him there. And then
he wouldn't take him to the movies, so they thought of using blind man's bluff.
Yes, and he calls them little Daleks.
Yeah, I love that.
So,
by the way, I like the way they get Clara into the telepathic conference call. They do the letter across time thing. So she gets a letter one day, and it's from Madame Vastra, and it says read. The envelope says read when alone. So she leaves the kids and goes to, I guess, her bedroom or something, and reads the letter, and it explains about the situation with the Doctor, and it says we need to have a telepathic conference call, and we can do this across time because when people are asleep, their mind can move in time. And so I've included a candle, and if you light the candle, it will cause you to go to sleep, and we can have this conference call. And Clara kind of frowns when she looks at the candle.
And tosses the candle away. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the letter says, however, having anticipated you might not want to use the candle, I've also included the same drug in the paper of this letter. and so Clara falls asleep anyway.
Right. Which, I mean, it's sensible that just to light the random candle someone sends you in the mail.
Dude. Whoa. Sometime on Mysterious World, we're going to have to talk about mail security because back in like the 1920s and stuff, people would get little bottles of stuff in the mail. This is like in the early 20th century and the late 19th century. You would get little bottles of mail little bottles in the mail from an anonymous admirer to like help you out with your physical condition or as a beauty aid or something like that. And it was poison. This was one of the way you poisoned people. You would send them a little bottle in the mail and tell them it was some tonic that would help them in some way, and then they would die.
That seems naive, but plausible that people would fall for that.
Yeah.
Well, people fall for the Nigerian scams still, so.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. We're not any smarter in general. So once Clara tells the doctor what's going on, they head to the TARDIS, and inside he says something very interesting. He says that he'd always thought he'd retire. Like, first he says, I'm going to do what a time traveler should never, ever, ever do, which is go to the place of his grave. And he then kind of says, I always thought I'd be able to retire and take up watercolors or beekeeping, which is a significant thing because of the whole Delta and the Bannerman episode with the Seventh Doctor, where we meet that beekeeper who some speculate may be a future regeneration. Yes, right.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of funny.
Well, it's also there's another reference there that's more certain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I thought of Goranwi 2, who's living in 1959, and Stephen Moffat has acknowledged that Goranwi could be a future version of the Doctor, and in my headcanon he is, because he's just so much like the Doctor. But there's another reference there, which is Sherlock Holmes,
right? Because
that's what Sherlock Holmes does. After he gives up being a detective, he retires to the seaside and takes up beekeeping and things like that.
Oh.
And he even writes, and he's planned it for years. It comes up in multiple stories before he actually does it, that he's planning on retiring, and he's even going to write a book about practical apiary with some observations on the isolation of the queen. And then there's actually one story where he's yanked. There's two stories where he's yanked out of retirement. But there's one story where he's yanked out of retirement where he actually lives, because someone in the village where he lives in Dover has died. And he's got to solve it. And there's no actual villain. It turns out it's a jellyfish.
Okay. Well, and given that Moffat was making Sherlock at the same time,
Yes.
that would be top of mind. So, yeah. Okay.
They play with the beekeeping in that as well. When there's an episode where Sherlock has this woman he's romanced, and this is from the stories actually, but there's this woman Sherlock has romanced in order to gain access to a particular place, and he's even gotten himself engaged to her, and then she learns it's all a ruse, and she forgives him but sells her story to the tabloids for a lot of money, and so she's going to take the money and buy this place where there's like a beekeeping.
Okay. So they get to Trenzalore, and he tells Clara it's a battlefield graveyard, and he tells her that the bigger the monument, the higher ranking the soldier. And of course, the TARDIS towers over everything, and she misunderstands that it's a monument. He goes, no, that's the actual TARDIS, because when a TARDIS is dying, its dimensional cells or something start breaking down.
Technobabble happens, and the bigness on the inside starts to leak out and affect the outside.
Yep.
Yes.
Called a size leak.
Yes.
Also, I like the way they get to Trenzalore, because the TARDIS does not want to go there.
Yeah.
and it rebels, and the Doctor kind of forces it to go to Trenzalore. Also, I want to back up even further because we're kind of leapfrogging through this episode rather quickly.
Mm-hmm.
When Clara is explaining to the Doctor about what Vastra, Jenny, and Strax have learned, we kind of get this. It's cut the scene is cut in a very interesting way to where we don't hear her actually explain it all, but we cut from her beginning to explain it to the end of her explaining it because we don't need it all summarized for us. We've just seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt Smith breaks down and starts crying and says, "Are you sure she said Trenzalore?" And that's a very moving, effective moment that shows the audience just how powerful the stakes are and the thought of his oncoming death at Trenzalore and things like that. So I thought that was a really good moment. And then I thought it further was nice in building the stakes when the TARDIS won't go there. And the TARDIS is trying to protect him, and he forces it to go there anyway. That's very effective on an emotional level. And then when he's got it there, it won't land on the planet. So they're like stuck in orbit, and he's got to get him down. And that's where we get the bit about, beekeeping and watercolors. And then when we get down to the surface of Trenzalore, it's basically a big cemetery world at this point. We get a glimpse of it from orbit where it's like totally been devastated, and it's just black with what may be some lava, some places. It looks like Apocalypse from DC Comics. It's this hell world now, and we get down there, and it's basically one enormous graveyard.
And I was going to say this whole scene where he talks about where he gets emotional, he runs out, he hears from River. Now this is River from the library, right?
Correct. She's a data ghost.
Okay, so this is the Data Ghost River. So this is probably the latest version of River we have seen. I think it is.
Yes.
In the show. And so she knows all of the history. Okay. And then he mentions that he heard the name of Trenzalore from Dorium, which was the blue guy who got his head taken off, right? Yep. That was the first one who told him about that. Okay, it's just kind of putting the pieces together. So they get down there, and only Clara can still see River, but we're told that the Doctor can't. We eventually find out that he actually can.
Right. The only reason that Clara can see River is because River left the telepathic conference call line open.
Right. Leave that Zoom call running in the background. And they find River's tomb, her grave there on the planet. And then that's a clue to the Doctor, like, wait a minute, there shouldn't be a grave for River on this planet because this is not where her body is. It turns out it's a secret entrance underground that helps them escape from the Whispermen.
Yeah, rather pointlessly, because it's kind of a stretcher. I think this is one of the weaker points in the episode where River's tomb is actually a secret entrance to the TARDIS, to the Doctor's tomb. Why would anybody do that if River's not at the battlefield? How did this plan form in the minds of the people who would be burying the Doctor? Right. This is implausible, but it's also pointless in the plot because, and this is another flaw in the episode, because they kind of have a back entrance. The Doctor and Clara have a back entrance to the TARDIS, and they're climbing around in the innards of the TARDIS, and Clara is starting to remember things about being the Impossible Girl because in the journey to the center of the TARDIS, the Doctor had confronted her and told her what he knew about her, but then because she learned his name, her memories got blanked.
Right.
So she shouldn't be remembering this stuff. She's starting to remember it. And they're climbing around in this and she's kind of dizzy, and we get some interesting camera effects to convey she's dizzy and disoriented as they're climbing up through the innards of the TARDIS, and it's all broken and the time is doing weird stuff. And then suddenly they're outside the TARDIS. I mean, the Whispermen are chasing them, and then suddenly they're outside of the TARDIS at the door, and the Doctor is being asked his name so that they can go inside the TARDIS from the front.
Yeah.
And so that whole thing, climbing around in the innards of the TARDIS and River Song's being grave, was just wasted because apparently, and this is very poorly communicated, I guess the Whispermen captured them, brought them all the way out through the back entrance of the TARDIS through River's grave again, and brought him around to the front entrance so that the Great Intelligence could ask him his name and go in through the front door.
Yeah.
And this is all just done in a jump cut, and there's no explanation of how this happened. I feel like there's something missing here, that there's like deleted footage that they cut, I guess, for length, because this is just way too abrupt. It's totally disorienting to the audience. You have to think about, well, wait, they were just inside the TARDIS. Why are they at the front door now?
Yeah.
Were they in the TARDIS, or because at one point it says they're in the catacombs? That's the tunnels they're running through with the stone. I suppose the more industrial-looking spaces might have been the TARDIS. Yeah.
That was supposed to be like the back door of the TARDIS that they went through.
The doctor, and Clara mentions, hey, we've done this before. We were climbing around on the inside of the TARDIS like this just recently, and that's when her memories start coming back.
Gotcha. Yeah. Meanwhile, in the annals of Stephen Moffat, No One Ever Dies, Jenny is brought back by Strax, who Vastra is distraught, demands Strax bring her back, and he says, "Unhand me, ridiculous reptile," which I think was a great line.
Because he is a battlefield nurse.
Yes, right, exactly. And so he's got advanced technology to bring her back. And then we get this confrontation at the door to the TARDIS. It's Dr. Simeon, but not really. It just looks like him. It's really the Great Intelligence, who has been this villain from starting with the Second Doctor. We heard in the Yeti episode, and has shown up again several times. And now this is the final confrontation. And he says, by the end, the Doctor will be known as Storm, the Beast, the Valeyard. And this is an interesting development, a sort of confirmation of sorts that the Doctor is the Valeyard from the Six Doctors season there.
Also, he refers to the Doctor as the slaughterer of the 10 billion and the vessel of the final darkness. And his argument is, I'm going to stop the Doctor. I'm going to take revenge on the Doctor because he doesn't stay the nice guy he gets darker with time.
Right. And the Great Intelligence, it says it needs the Doctor's name to open the tomb. But why? Why does it need the name?
It's a password it's like if you have a car with one of those electronic locks, you need a password.
Yep.
Okay. And it's apparently a new thing, right? I mean, having the Doctor's
it's a new
name.
thing.
Yeah, okay. And so the Doctor doesn't say it, but River does from inside Clara's mind.
Well, River is there as a data ghost, and she has some agency and can walk around. She's not perceptible to anyone but Clara, but she can move independently. And she apparently goes behind the Doctor and goes up to the TARDIS and whispers his name.
Okay. And the TARDIS can hear her because the TARDIS has telepathic circuits, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. So inside they find the control room, which is all overgrown in weed, implying it's been a long, long time. And this writhing column of light, something that represents the Doctor's. Well, it represents his time stream. That's what that's his remains, is his time stream. And as it says, it's his scar tissue of his journey through time and space, which is kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. Is this like? Do you think this is like a regular Time Lord thing that this is how they all end up?
It's unclear.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've never seen this before. This gets them around. This does two things for them on the plot level. The first is it gets them around the problem of what is the Doctor's final form, because they don't have to show us his final form, so it leaves that a mystery. And then it gives the Great Intelligence and Jenny something to jump into. Right. Because if it were a body, they couldn't jump into it.
Right, that's true. He calls it the tracks of my tears, which the Doctor does, which kind of recalls the song. Simeon says less poetry, more just tell them.
Yeah,
which is kind of funny.
And they have a hard time describing it because it doesn't really make any sense because we're living in a time stream. It doesn't make any sense to say this is the Doctor's time stream.
Right.
you don't want to waste time. Go, okay, this is some kind of analogical direct representation transformation thing of the Doctor's time stream. So he actually never explains it really well. This is the scars of my. That's nonsense. But just go with it.
Yeah, he does. He says time travel is damage, and so it tears reality as you do it, which seems like a bad idea then. But in any case, the point is the great intelligence is going to jump into the time stream and be scattered along the Doctor's timeline into a million bits and interfere and destroy all along the way.
Which is juice in the drama, but really, if you just killed him when he was a baby, the problem would be solved. You don't need to attack his life at every moment. I mean, how does that even work?
Yeah. Well, especially given that the Doctor has saved the universe a few times along the way. You just have to interfere in one of those and you've destroyed the universe. So
and they show that by the stars kind of winking out, it's the stereotypical effect of a star at a time blinks off, as the timeline gets destroyed.
Yeah. It's the time travel problem. Meanwhile, Clara realizes that the only way to save everything, including the Doctor, is to go into the scar, to jump into the time stream, because she knows she's already done it, because she has these memories of being the Impossible Girl, Souffle Girl, the girl from Victorian London, etc. And so a million copies to save the Doctor, but the real Clara will die. But not really.
No.
Because no one ever dies. There's a line here, like she was making a souffle in the house with the kids earlier, and was quoting some aphorism of her mother that the souffle isn't the souffle is the recipe, which is nonsense. The recipe is just instructions. The souffle is the thing. But this is her justification for saying, all of those aren't me. I'm me because I'm the original template or something. In any case, she jumps in and she meets the first Doctor. We get that scene again where she tells him to don't take that TARDIS, take this one with the knackered navigation system because it'll be more fun. That's the justification. And then we get her, in various other time streams doing some things. We don't see her doing actual
saving,
but we see her sort of in those once again with the various Doctors. There's that one where she's with the second Doctor and he's running through a park. It looks like California, someplace with palm trees. Yep. That's not from an actual episode, though, is it?
No, what they've done is that's from the footage is from the Five Doctors, where he is outdoors running around in his big fur coat, and they've altered the background so that it looks like he's in a more kind of tropical California-ish palm tree environment.
Okay. Because I guess that's one way to get him in color. Although they didn't have the first Doctor in color, but the rest were all in color.
They showed us the first Doctor on a screen, or using a body double.
That's right.
Yep.
So everything's fixed, but now Clara is dead, and so the Doctor has to jump into the time stream to save Clara. And of course he does.
And this is a part of the episode where I think the writing really falls down and becomes. I mean, I know what they're doing, but how it works is incomprehensible. Because up in his tomb, River he's planning on jumping into the time stream to try to save Clara, and apparently that's dangerous to him. Because he says he may not come back, and he tells the Paternoster gang how to get back to Earth using the younger version of the TARDIS. But River is really mad at him for wanting to do this because it's dangerous. And she goes to slap him, and he catches her hand and reveals he's always known she was here. Yeah. He was just pretending not to because he thought it would be too painful for him to talk to her. And he says it is really painful for him to talk to her. And they have this because this is effectively for now, the end of River's song on the show. They are, even though they later bring her back, Stephen Moffat wants to write a goodbye scene here.
Mm-hmm.
So he writes a goodbye scene. And it's implied that this is the last we may see of River. And that was the plan. He didn't know he was going to bring her back. But as part of the goodbye scene, he's working towards 2 lines, which are variations on River's taglines. The first is spoilers, and the second is hello, sweetie. So since this is her end, it's going to be goodbye, sweetie. And so goodbye, sweetie has to be her last line.
Mhm.
And he wants to get spoilers in right before that. And so even though this makes virtually no sense when you think about it, she says, like the next to last thing she says is, so I'm I'm only here because I'm in telepathic contact with Clara. So if Clara is dead, how can I still be here? And Matt Smith says, okay, how? And that's when she says, spoilers. And then they do the goodbye, and she says, fades out and says, goodbye, sweetie. And when I think all they mean by that is the bit about Clara being alive is she didn't die. She's still in your time stream. Go get her.
Yeah.
But why they build it up with spoilers is just because that's one of River's taglines. It doesn't really make any sense in context.
Right.
Because it points to something more momentous. Like there's something important about your future that you can't be told yet. And there's not. If all she's saying is, hey, she's still in there, go get her. Or whatever. So I thought that was bad writing. And then we get to see inside the Doctor's time stream where Clara is. It's really a relit version of the surface of Trenzalore. And he's saying everything. We hear this voiceover narration from Matt Smith telling Clara that everything you see here is me. And she starts to see, former incarnations of his running by and stuff. And then he says, I'm sending you something that will help get you out of here. And the leaf floats down. And he tells her that the leaf is everything you were or will be, which is poetic nonsense. She's a girl, not a leaf. This has nothing to do with anything. It's just a memory from her past. And then, okay, she's got the leaf. Why doesn't she pop out of the time stream? Because it was just implied the leaf was going to play a role in getting her out of the time stream, and it plays none. It's just Moffat poetry being inserted here visually. So then Matt Smith himself shows up in this redressed Trenzalore set and he's like, and this is partially not Moffat's fault, but the way it plays, you've got Matt Smith standing some distance away from Clara, and now that she's got the leaf for no reason, he's gesturing to her going, come on, you can do it, come to me. And it's like, dude, you just winked in through like a portal door thingy. Just keep that open and you can both walk out of it together.
Right.
Yeah.
And instead, he's got to do this. Come to Papa, honey. You can do it. Come on. I know you can. Just to juice the drama, as if her ability to walk was not impaired. Why are you juicing the drama on this?
Right.
But it comes across as they're just ratcheting up the drama and extending this, and it doesn't play particularly well because we're totally in dream logic at this point, and I'm not a fan of that. I want my story to make more sense than it's making at this point.
Right.
Now, in fairness to them, originally Matt Smith was going to carry her out of his time stream, but he had a knee injury and couldn't do that. So that's part of why this comes across as incoherently as it does. But from the viewer's perspective, this is coming across incoherently.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he got a football knee injury, I think I remember now. Yeah.
And we don't actually see them leaving the time stream at all.
Right.
It just ends.
And so we have this this moment where as he's grabbing her in the time stream, they turn and they see this other figure with his back to them, and Clara's, "Who's that?" And he doesn't want to talk about it. And she says, "I saw all of you. I never saw that one. I saw all of you. 11 faces, all of them you. You're the 11th Doctor," which Timeless Child breaks. And then,
well, Stephen Moffat would break it anyway because Matt Smith's actually the 13th Doctor.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, right. And then his line is, "Look, my real name. That's not the point. The name I chose is the Doctor. The name you choose, it's like a promise you make. He's the one who broke the promise." Because he went to war, I guess.
No, because he destroyed the Time Lords and the Daleks. He committed not just he went to war. The Doctor's done that a bunch.
Yeah.
This version of him committed double xenocide.
Okay. Right. And that's the unforgivable thing that he did that he can't forgive himself for. And when you're a regenerator, you have that separation from your previous incarnations that is sort of, it's not like he can kind of not forgive himself, but it's I don't know, it's just
he can also kind of distance himself from it and say that that's not quite me, but it is kind of me.
And then we get the John Hurt turning around and saying, introducing John Hurt as the Doctor, and then we fade out from there, and then to be continued November 23rd for the 50th anniversary special. And we get this series of the Doctor titled episodes from here. We get the Night of the Doctor, the Day of the Doctor, and then
the Time of the Doctor.
Time of the Doctor, right? Which we've already talked about all of those, so we're not going to be discussing those from here on out. If you want to check out what we had to say about those, you can go back and look at our previous episodes on those. So, anything else left to say on this, Father Cory?
Nothing really, although I got a kick out of how River kept saying that the Doctor doesn't like endings. It's like, well, is that the Doctor or Stephen Moffat? Because we talked about it, how he doesn't like endings. He doesn't like to kill off characters. So it's like, is River really talking about him?
Right. How about you, Jimmy?
Nope.
Okay. I did think, but I just want to add the one funny thing about when he was kissing River, and he's like, no one else can see you, so this must look really weird right now.
Yeah. I would say that overall, despite the fact I've been pretty critical of this, as I mentioned earlier, it does have a lot of good stuff in it. It has a lot of stuff I like.
Yeah.
I don't like the fake out about his name.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can accept it, but I didn't like it at the time. That wound is kind of healed. Not that it was ever really a wound. It's just something I didn't prefer.
Mm-hmm.
But in this, I pretty much like the episode until the very end, because I think that the last few scenes where the Doctor's talking to River, and the whole thing about the Doctor going into his own time stream to save Clara, that needed to be better done.
Yeah,
and it was partly Moffat's fault as a writer because he was trying to jump through too many hoops, and that made it awkward, but also it was partly out of their control. But that's where I think the episode suffers the most, is in the final scene.
And I guess that's where I got confused when I watched it the first time, is that because of those flaws. Yeah. All right. So I did mention that we have some listener feedback from our recent episode on the Terror of the Vervoids, the Sixth Doctor story we talked about. Our first feedback comes from Ted on Facebook, who said, sorry to disagree with Jimmy, but I forgot how annoying Mel was, especially at the beginning of the episode when she was fat-shaming the Doctor, and he threw a smiley emoji in there. I also agree with the viewers who thought that Janet would be a good companion. I had those same thoughts.
Well, I don't have any problem with Janet. I actually like Mel. I don't like the way she's written a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the way she's like fat shaming the Doctor and stuff like that. That was not, but that's not who the character fundamentally is. Mm-hmm. And it's also not the way the actress fundamentally is. That's the way the character is written. And often characters have very shaky introductions. Mel gets better with time.
Yep.
And it's like Ace. You look at Ace's first appearance in Dragonfire. Wow, Ace is a shaky character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, and even her name. I mean, she's constantly using Ace as an interjection. and
Yep.
and it's really annoying.
Oh, thankfully they got over that.
They fix that really quickly. And in the same way, Mel has a shaky introduction, but is then much better. And she, especially in the Big Finish extensions, I mean, unfortunately, she doesn't have a lot of time on screen in the TV series itself. I mean, she has a couple of adventures, like with the Seventh Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But then her run on the show is really short, but she has done a bunch of Big Finish, and she's really good in that.
Oh, right. Cool. Well, I'll look forward to seeing those. And then we had more feedback from Jason on Facebook, who wrote, "I'm shocked that you all enjoyed this. Their vervoids looked terrible." Well, it's classic Who.
Yeah. For a show of this period, I mean, to me, the visuals have never been what's interesting about science fiction. Mm-hmm. If there are good visuals, it's great. That helps.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have something that has high quality effects and costumes and still be terrible. To me, it's really about the story and the ideas.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is miles better than the Twin Dilemma. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's not saying much.
Low bar. Paul wrote on YouTube, "You did not mention that the Professor Lasky was played by Honor Blackman, who's famous as Pussy Galore from the Bond movie and being Kathy Gale in The Avengers. A shame on you for not finding out about the guest actors." Well,
we try.
Yeah, we try.
I found out. I just chose not to mention it because I normally don't mention that. That's more of Father Cory and Dom's thing to point out other roles that people have played. I will do it occasionally, but not that much.
Yeah, I often, it's if they recognize them as Star Wars actors, I will definitely call them out.
Yeah,
but I didn't know her from Avengers. I never watched that show. So,
yep, I missed that one too. So it's just, oh well, we miss it.
Well, we're not going to catch everybody. We'll do our best though. But thank you all for your feedback. We really appreciate getting feedback. So as we wrap up, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Christopher M., Claire P., Andrew V., Mary B., and Paul D. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear your feedback on The Name of the Doctor. Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Fourth Doctor story, Underworld. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Goodbye, sweetie.
Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom. Now we can go back to destroying some pleasant primitives.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, when you're a time traveler, there is one place you must never go: to your own grave.